please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Welcome back. So, not at the lowest point of the day. That's the good news. If you want to be an optimist, at least the Nifty bank has managed to, retrace above 25,100. The Nifty is also just off the lows of the day. Manish Sonthalia joins in. He's, of course, from Motilal Oswal, AMC. Manish, good talking to you this Friday afternoon. Not been a very good day or a very good week for, the bulls out there. What is your sense? I mean, A, do you expect this cool-off period in the market or this correction period to continue? Will it last for a while? And B, does it impact, investor psyche right now, particularly on the retail side?
So, a couple of things out here, First is all these technical factors, this MSCI rejig, or let's say, the capital gains and all those things are creating rising interest rates in the US. All these things are actually creating downward pressure on Indian markets. That is one aspect. But on the other hand, you have robust SIP flows that are not changing. The inquiries towards equity investing still continues with retail SMI investors, so that hasn't changed. Unlikely that is going to change in a hurry. And the last and the most important thing is that the earnings growth is picked up. So the earnings momentum is surely there. I think all these things lead to some sort of conclusion that you could see some more downside from these levels. But the story is not over as far as India is concerned. There could be some P/D rating, but earnings growth is picking up and things should be fine from a broad market outlook.
Okay, Manish, good afternoon. So, do you think this underperformance that we have got for ourselves now for a good part of 1 month could continue for some time?
It could. I mean, look, Indian markets, and we have seen that can correct 10-15% anytime with or without any reason. Now, there are some global reasons, some local reasons for a correction to take place. And we've seen that starting the budget day onwards. So there could be some more downside. We could even break below 10,000. But if one was to look at slightly longer term perspective, we should be fine. I mean, things are pretty good as far as the corporate India side of things are concerned, the earnings, etc. And that is ultimately what matters as far as the stock prices are concerned. So I think it's a temporary setback, pullback in the market. And I don't see any reason to get overly worried about this.
All right, Manish, thanks very much for your view and your time this afternoon. You have a good weekend. Let's move on and welcome in our next guest on the show, Sudip Bandopadhyay, Group Chairman of Inditrade Capital with us. Good afternoon, Sudip. First question, do you think the market can move on beyond the PNB fraud news and the sell down in PSU banks, or do you think we probably will see some continuation of this even next week?
Well, Surabhi, I think it's a very, very unfortunate thing what's happened in PNB, and beyond everything, it opens up the issue that are the systems and processes in PSBs adequately robust to protect the money which the banks have. If this kind of fraud can happen with the connivance of a couple of employees in a branch, I mean, if this kind of, and it starts happening in different parts of the country in multiple branches, imagine the consequence. So I think the investors are worried, and there is a rationale and a reason behind this worry. So we can't really discount that worry. So it's really, really worrisome. And I will think that PSBs will take some time to recover. Investor confidence in PSBs has taken a big beating. There are multiple issues, and this kind of takes the cake. So we have to be extremely careful on PSBs. Overall, the market, we believe that markets will start recovering next week. And probably, some of the stocks which are getting beaten down, like NBFCs and some of the new generation private sector banks, that's probably unwarranted.
Okay, Ashwani, I wanted your thoughts on iShares and Maruti. Is it looking like, more than the normal correction? I mean, iShares is now down 18% from its highs. Maruti as well is down 12%. And normally these two stocks are the ones which actually bounce back the first. Even if the market does not make a new high, they normally make new highs. Your thoughts on these two stocks?
See, first of all, I think the first phase generally in a bull market belongs to these auto stocks and consumption stocks. So they may not bounce back before other stocks, because if we are getting into the investment phase of the bull market, then people will move on from these stocks and get into infrastructure, etc. But the problem with iShares is that it had constructed a rally from 26,500 to about 28.5, but that rally has been almost given up. Even on Maruti, I think at some point we could get closer to 8,200, 8,400, closer to 200-day moving average. And if the market has to correct, obviously these stocks will come under pressure. But I don't think autos will perform as well as they have done in the last couple of years.
One interesting stock that's come up on my screen is GSK Consumer. This stock has actually had a pretty decent week in such a bad environment or lackluster environment. It's actually up 9%. And the management had a conference call with analysts earlier this week. It seems whatever they've said has gone down really well. 4% up on GSK Consumer as we are speaking, with lots of buying coming in the last few moments of trade. Prakash, I'm just trying to see stocks that are finding, the will to bounce back. There's Bombay Burma. Yesterday, Bombay Dyeing had a good session for itself. Then there is also a PC Jeweler. Ashwani was also talking about it. Anything on your radar which could be a contrarian buy right now?
No, really. Bombay Burma you're speaking about, yes, it looks up. 1500 could be a stop. It can climb to levels closer to 1580. So there would be some individual pockets that are going up. It has seen a contraction. Now it's going into expansion mode. So perhaps we can see an up move here. But looks like it's heading into a resistance close up there.
Okay, all right, Prakash, thanks very much for being with us. And Ashwani, thank you as well. We'll watch out for the goalposts that you've outlined for the market. Let's see. Have a good weekend. We'll see you again with the markets. Sudip, some more questions for you. If you could just stay on, because I think, Anuj, we're getting into the last minute and a half. So maybe we recap the rates. Not as bad, but I don't know. The screen is still looking all red pretty much.
No, quite bad actually, Surabhi, because, whatever last 10-15 minute recovery that you had was essentially shorts taking home. And that too also was not big, except for a PNB. PNB was the only stock. I mean, the one which led the market fall was the one which saw some bit of short covering. I don't know, is this the market's way of saying that, okay, look, maybe, the worst has now been priced into that stock? We'll find out. But, whichever way you look at it, whether advanced decline for last 2 days, whether you look at IT move, whether you look at metals move, it was not, good going for the market. In terms of stocks, of course, banking was clearly the top problem point for the market. And today, the stock that really put a lot of pressure on the market was State Bank and ICICI Bank. So these two stocks were down quite a bit. Yes Bank as well. Yes Bank is interesting because, one thought it bottomed out at 300 last time, then had a rally, but now is headed back towards that 300 mark. IndusInd Bank as well. Other than that, Maruti was quite interesting, and Maruti has now corrected quite a bit from the highs of 10,000 now to 8,800 on Maruti. Tata Steel, Reliance were a couple of other losers. On the way up, of course, Infosys batted for the bulls. So TCS gave up all of its gains and ended with just about 0.2% gain. At one point, it was up 2.5%, but those gains were given up. And perhaps Ambuja Cement was the other notable gainer in trade today. But mid caps once again underperforming today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 1% decline on the index coming in. If we talk about some of the major losers, lots of selling on Sun TV, for instance, when dying moments of trade even accentuated, 6% down on that stock. Apollo Hospitals about 5% down. You've got quite a few names on the lower side. KRBL losing some ground as well. But let me talk about some of the other bigger losers. Some of the metal names obviously were under pressure, as we've been saying. So SAIL has lost about 5%. Apollo Tyres is down about 4% as well. Motherson Sumi, the correction after numbers continues, 4% lower on that stock. One of the foreign brokerages came out with a lower price target as well on it today. Delta Corp about 4% down. Then, of course, the indebted plays have been out of favor. So Bhushan Steel, GVK, many of these stocks are down between 4 and 5%, depending on which one you are looking at. So that's where the bulk of the selling has sort of continued. If you talk about the outliers on the upside, PC Jewelers, for what it's worth, 6-7% up on that stock. Religare has managed a 5% up move. Let's see the final rates on Fortis. We'll just pull that stock up for you as well. Fortis is down 4% last count. That's how it's kind of closing out the day for itself. PI Industries had a late burst for itself. But again, very, very few stocks where you can talk about an upside. Some of the PSU banks, as we are rounding up, let's bring up some of the PSU banks. Your Allahabad Bank, Bank of Baroda, OBC. Many of these stocks managed to come off the lows of the day. There was some sort of shorts taking profit, but nonetheless, the color is red on quite a few of them, even as we are winding down. So 1% gone from the Nifty and a little more than that from the mid-cap index. Anuj, so I guess that's how it's closing out. 10,452, I think, 450 thereabouts on adjustment.
Oh, yes. So, been fall 11,153 was the high, I think. So now we are talking about a 700-point correction on the Nifty, the Sensex as well, now at 34,000. So it's been a decent correction for the market. Of course, the Bank Nifty is the one which has led it. But Sudip, next week is of course expiry week, and the global markets have started to do well once again. Is there a case of this market now, everyone getting short and market seeing an aggressive short covering sort of bounce? Maybe next week itself, that's the expiry week?
Absolutely correct, Anuj. That's exactly the scenario we are building. Very clearly the global markets have been extremely supportive, and we are actually underperforming by a large margin the global markets. Also remember, the big issue with India is the crude oil price going up. Now we have crude oil price which has come down to $64. It's actually very good news for India, and we are discounting all that and focusing completely on the PNB issue and other domestic issues, which there is a genuine cause. But somewhere because of the expiry week next week, we expect a large bounce back, predominantly led by the short covering.
Okay. All right, Sudip, we'll wrap then on that note. Thank you very much for your time and for your take on the market today. Well, as we're wrapping out, here's our closing bell money control question of the day. What we asked you was that, like Vijay Mallya, will Nirav Modi also manage to stay beyond the reach of Indian law enforcement agencies? Obviously, some very volatile responses coming in there. 86% of the respondents say yes. 14% say otherwise. And Anuj, I think, it's not a surprise, but yeah, there are a lot of very vocal views on social media and on the website because of this.
Oh, yes, there would be, for an issue like this. First respondent saying that in all likelihood, he can easily stay in safe havens beyond the reach of Indian extradition treaty. How long will we go after fraudsters when our employees colluded with them? So, yeah, really strong words.
Okay. Well, the next respondent says that yes, first they are allowed to leave the country. And then, of course, we see the news of the frauds coming out. So it seems that Indian law enforcement is more for the poor and the middle class than for the rich. So lots of very, very strict and stringent sort of views coming in out there. Before we get to Closing Bell Recommends, a couple of stories. As the current IRDA Chairman retires on the 21st of February, the selection process for a successor is picking up pace. Yash has more details on how that's playing up. Yash, fill us in.
Well, the race for the next IRDA chairman is getting increasingly interesting as we move closer to that date of February 21st when the current IRDA chairman retires. Now, the latest that we're given to understand here is that the selection committee headed by the Cabinet Secretary P.K. Sinha has shortlisted around 8 candidates for the position of next IRDA chairman. And in terms of the candidates which have been shortlisted from the insurance industry, we are given to understand that Mr. G. Srinivasan, who is the chairman and managing director of New India Assurance, as well as very interestingly V.K. Sharma, who is the current LIC chairman. These two have been shortlisted for the position of next IRDA chairman. Also, if you talk about the bureaucratic circle, from there Mr. Rajiv Sharma, who is the Chief Secretary for the state of Telangana, as well as Ratna Prabha, who is the Chief Secretary for the state of Karnataka. These two have been shortlisted for the position of next IRDA chairman. From this point, we are given to understand that there will be an interview process for these shortlisted candidates, which will happen over the next 3 days, and a final call on the name of the next IRDA chairman may be expected anytime post February 18th. Now, V.K. Sharma and G. Srinivasan have replied to CNBC TV18 story saying that it's quite premature to comment as they do not have an official government confirmation on the same, and Rajiv Sharma and Ratna Prabha could not be reached out for a comment.
All right, Yash, thanks very much for that. Let's now move on to CNBC TV18 exclusive. We're learning from sources that the government is considering relaxing safety rules for deadline for electric vehicles. Ron Joy Banerjee is here with all the details. Ron?
Survey. Well, if you remember, last year the government had come out with clear safety guidelines that all new cars that get launched in the country will have to meet certain frontal and offset crash requirements. This, if you remember, was after a global NCAP, which is a global sort of safety agency, had pretty much failed all the Indian popular cars. So as per the current regulations, all new cars have to meet these stringent requirements from April 2017. But what we now understand is that as far as electric cars are concerned, a high-level government panel, which is the CMVR Committee of the Ministry of Roads and Transport, which pretty much frames all the rules and regulations as far as the automobile industry is concerned, they have now proposed that electric cars be given a 2-year extension from meeting these requirements. So now any new electric car that gets launched will not have to meet the safety requirements that is meant for the normal or the non-electric vehicle or the normal IC engine cars. So electric cars have been given an extension till October 2020. What this essentially means is the Mahindras, the Tata Motors, the Hyundais of the world will be able to come up with electric cars before October 2019, and they will be a lot cheaper as compared to what they would have been if they would have had to meet the stringent safety requirements. So my sense is you're going to see most of these big automakers trying to circumvent the October 29 deadline and trying to fast-track the electric vehicles plans. But one can only wonder and guess why the government would, or this committee would actually propose something like this. Are they trying to say that electric cars are less safe, or safety is not that required? So a lot of questions have now been raised because of this proposal by the committee.
Okay, all right, Ron. Thanks very much for getting us all of those details. One more corporate story. AkzoNobel, the Dutch paints company that makes the Dulux brand of premium home paints, is slowly expanding its focus on the mass product segment to compete with giants like Asian Paints. However, the global CEO of the company says that the company will not go wild with its expansion plans. Here's more from my colleague Archana's chat with the global CEO.
I think we'd be disappointed, but don't tell it. The local team would be disappointed if it didn't grow at a 10% a year as such, and also bringing then the profitability along.
For AkzoNobel, industrial paints has been the segment where you've focused on. That's the largest segment contributing to revenues. What is the revenue mix right now if we talk of decorative paints and industrial? Well, and going forward, do you see that change? Actually, decorative paint is the largest part of it. I think both of them have been growing at about the same pace, I would say. If I look at decorative paint, that is really GDP business. We have plenty of opportunity, great team in place, so I think that's going to grow at this famous 1.2 times the GDP. If you look at industrial coatings, the growth rate might be slightly higher because we are in segments that are very fast growing. In the whole coatings industry, powder coatings is the fastest growing segment. And that's exactly where we are very strong. And you speak about being in the premium product segment. Despite being in a premium product segment, your margins in the India business have not been as strong as your competitors. What's the plan there? How are you looking at the margin picture? Well, if you look at the can of paint itself, I think we're holding our own. Of course, the larger you are, the more that you can actually leverage your volume over your cost. And that's what we're playing on. In fact, this investment here in the powder coating is definitely one that's going to help. What we try to do is having highly specialized products that basically bring a good margin and adding it there where we can bring the most value as such. What are the key challenges that you're facing right now? What are the headwinds that you think your company here in India, in the business, as well as globally is facing, which could slow down the growth that you are anticipating? Well, two things. One, the whole industry has been suffering of raw material increases quite significantly. I mean, if you look at some key raw materials like titanium dioxide has been going up in price quite a lot, and that's a significant cost factor. So that has driven the need in the whole industry to try to get the prices up for our products, and that always gives a lot of dust cloud in the market on who goes first, etc., etc. So raw material cost has been a big item. Okay, that's AkzoNobel with their India strategy. Well, right now it's time to go beyond business and markets. The weekend is almost here. So let's welcome in our in-house entertainment detective, Mangalam Malu, with the latest. Mangalam, I'm very tempted to ask you about, he's also the paint man, the piano man. So I'm very tempted to ask you about AkzoNobel, but no, let's talk about the weekend.
We'll talk about the weekend, and with the entertainment detective, we have the cricket detective as well with us. Anuj, we'll talk about a phenomenal T20 that happened today. But 3 films for this weekend. The first one, Black Panther, Marvel's most awaited film for 2018. I won't be lying, I had the fortune of watching it yesterday before it released, and if initial things are something to go by, it is definitely worth the wait. Why? Because King T'Challa, if you've seen Marvel films after Captain America, Civil War, whatever happened. King T'Challa has now gone back to Wakanda in Africa, and now he wants to protect the vibranium and leads his people. Black Panther as a title, it's not one particular superhero. It's a title which is passed on from king to king. So that story is very interesting. It is in Africa. It has all the superhero sci-fi things. And if you're a fan of Africa Kingdom, you would of course remember The Lion King, which I thought was one of the best films that I watched as a child. This is Lion King for the adults. Initial review, everything is perfect, very good. If my word is something to go by, it's mind-blowing. If you want to watch another good Hollywood film, watch The Shape of Water, 13 Oscar nominations, and when you have the nominations for Best Actor, Best Director, Best Picture, you go out and watch it. More importantly, the plot of the film, it's based in it's based in 1960s, I think, and it's about a janitor, a female mute janitor who works at a government lab, and whatever happens out there, there is a social experiment or something of that sort. I won't reveal much. Go ahead and watch the film. If you want your weekly fix of Indian films, you have Ayari, directed by Neeraj Pandey. There is Manoj Bajpayee in that. Those two are reasons enough for one to watch. The plot, it's two army men, loosely based on the Adarsh housing scam. It's based on a true story. So there are two thought processes which are countering each other. One of them is the mentor. There is Siddharth Malhotra, who is the mentee, so to say. Neeraj Pandey, he's done A Wednesday, he's done Special 26, he's also done Baby. So he has the knack for these things. The trailers were amazing. Let's go out and watch that film and then talk about the reviews, because initially I haven't seen much reviews on Twitter so far, but Ayari and The Shape of Water as well as Black Panther are the three films you have to catch. If you're not doing anything this evening, watch the Dead Rubber match, 4:30, India versus South Africa. India goes back to Centurion. Anuj, you watch ODIs or just plain test for you?
You know, I knew you would miss this, Mangalam. But, you know, you have missed out the most important event which would happen this weekend. Which would be Roger Federer becoming world #1 once again.
Okay. That's your first love, I think, right?
You know, it's frankly speaking, you know, February 2004 was the first time Roger Federer became world #1. Okay. You know, 2 months back when Nadal became world #1, it was the, you know, longest distance between a guy becoming #1 for the first time and the most recent time.
Right.
And also became the one of the oldest #1. Federer at the age of 37 would be the oldest #1, and the gap between the first time he became #1, February 2004 was the first time that Federer became world #1. February 2018, 14 years later, is where, you know, he's going to become world #1 again, and to do it at an age of 36, 37 is remarkable, because, you know, tennis players peak out at 28, 29. It's very rare, you know, of course Nadal is also doing it, that they continue in the 30s. But in the late 30s, to go on and become world #1, of course he has still got to win one match, but he'll do that.
Well, I'm very tempted to ask you, what were you doing in February 2004 when you were watching him become #1 first?
I was 1 year into CNBC TV18, exactly 1 year into
I was
CNBC
preparing
TV18.
for my 10th standard board exam, so which is exactly why I missed it, maybe.
And I used to handle the show Your Stocks on CNBC TV18. At that point, it used to be at 11 a.m.
Okay.
That was a time when, of course, we didn't used to cover the entire day of market. We used to cover 3 or 4 hours. That's it.
So there's been a mega bull market, whether it's tennis and Federer, or whether it's
what a complete circle,
equity.
right?
Exactly.
Now back on CNBC.
So
TV,
sometimes you forget, you know, whether it's 2007 or 2017, or 2008 or 2018.
That's true.
That's Roger Federer.
All right, Surabhi, your 2 bits on tennis?
No, I think I'll just reserve my judgment. I know the passion really purely and squarely rests with Anuj. But yes, you have inspired me. I think this is a piece of history, and I don't think I want to miss this match either. Let's chat commodities, and this is one week which is going down as a most positive one for all the sectors in the commodities as an asset class. Should start with the gold and silver prices first, because after a very long time, we have seen strength come back into this one. It is the play of the weakness in US dollar and the hedge against inflation as well. So 0.5% up for gold, 1360 is where it's trading, and silver prices as well have gained 3% in this week itself. We have seen good going for the industrial metals as well. It's the same theme really. It is the US dollar weakness which is binding it all together. And then, of course, apart from that, the economic data from most of the consuming countries has been positive. And we are looking at zinc prices trading at around near 10-year highs. Nickel has gained near 7% in this week at a 3-year highs as well. Let's invite in then Ram Pitre to talk more about all of these commodities and, of course, the strategies therein. Ram, hi, good to have you.
Let us also start with the gold and silver prices first. 3% a piece up in this week. What is your sense? Will this rally sustain as we get into the new week?
Yeah, Manisha, this in current month, it has attempted twice this $1,360 in international market. And the key level for this week or today's closing is very important on international market is $1,366. If it closes above that $1,366, then the next strong 2-year resistance area at $1,375 to $80. So these are the two important level of resistance on international market, and if that breaks 1,400 is definitely in your future. Having said that, the dollar index at the moment it is trading at almost a 3-year low at around 88.25. That suggests that there is some further room downside. So the possibility of breaking $1,375 is very important, and looks like that is possible. But having said that, whether the sustainability is a big question. I mean, the international dollar, if it goes higher, but it closes today's below $1,366, will give clear indication that the very strong resistance subside and we might go lower again.
Okay.
So it's a very important level to watch for on the current level of this.
Sure is. You know, the dollar index, as you also pointed out, Ram, is down 3% now for 2018 year till date. So, well, yes, that is a supportive factor there. But when you look at the industrial metals, it's a whole new story there. After the kind of gains that we've seen in the previous year, this rally continues to drive in on fuel. You know, if you look at nickel, zinc, copper, all of them trading at multi-year highs, which one are you picking and why?
In fact, the last 2 weeks, if you see the nickel and zinc is playing a very important role and is showing higher. But at the current level, I feel that slightly copper has not performed well, but last 1 or 2 weeks it is again falling is coming up. Sorry. But looks like today on definitely in domestic market, very important level is 1,000 in the domestic market 458 area.
Okay.
And if that holds, there is a possibility of hitting highs about 460, and we will see the 464. The recent high is around 472 level. That also can be tested very soon.
Okay. So which one do you think is the most bullish here? Because we've seen almost all the metals run up, with the exception, of course, of aluminum, where we have seen the fundamentals being on the weaker side. So if you have a bias, if you had to choose one of these metals, where do you see the strongest fundamentals? What do you think is looking the best on charts?
Of course, nickel is definitely among the three, nickel, zinc and copper. So nickel I prefer.
All right. Well, let's also talk about the crude oil prices, because after 2 weeks of decline, this week has seen some strength come back. We are trading at a one week highs right now. But at these current levels, what are you looking at? Because the fundamentals clearly are quite contradicting. Is there a clear direction that you see on charts, though?
In fact, Manisha, after touching the 66.66 high, it has come down to almost 58 level. It's almost $7 to $8 fall. It should have come down below 57 to around 56, 55. That should have cleared some technical angle. But now for this week, if it closes above $62 again in WTI, I think that we might go again back to around 66, 67 level. But if it goes below 66, 62 level, then we'll again come back to around 56, 57. So you may say the 57, 59 on the downside and upside around 62, 52, 63, 50 level. So this kind of a range likely to prevail in international market.
All right, so it's an out and out buy call coming in from all sectors in case of commodities. Ram, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your strategies. With that, it's time up on this edition of Closing Bell. After the bell comes up next.